John Kerry's daughter Vanessa has celebrated her promotion to the World Economic Forum's board of agenda contributors by urging the elitist organisation to transform itself into a world government and seize total control of humanity, regardless of whether we the people consent. According to Vanessa Kerry, the time is ripe for a globalist coup d'etat, which utilises the control mechanisms in the World Health Organization's pandemic treaty to create a world government that answers to nobody. Explaining that humanity has been softened up by the COVID pandemic, Kerry outlined disturbing plans to ramp up an agenda of fear-mongering propaganda about climate change, to terrorise humanity into giving up the last of our rapidly diminishing freedoms. In a video addressed to fellow members of the WEF, Vanessa Kerry claimed that the so-called climate crisis is now a health crisis too, which is convenient for the elite because it means their favourite fascist agency, the World Health Organization, can get involved in the response.
The climate crisis is a health crisis, and it's killing us. The events of this year, which is set to be the hottest on record, have brought this painful truth into sharp focus. Wildfires in the US, Canada, and Europe, record-breaking temperatures around the world. Each climate-driven event has left devastation, death, and a long tail of health complications in its wake.
It should come as no surprise that the daughter of climate conman John Kerry is spreading 100% fake news here. NASA's claims that we are living in the hottest year on record have been thoroughly debunked by independent investigators.
And so the time for challenging our leaders, the time for challenging the status quo, the time for bold and decisive action by every single one of us in this room is now. Already, up to 3.3 billion people in our world are highly vulnerable to the effects of climate change. The World Health Organization estimates that 1 in 4 of the world's deaths are from preventable environmental causes, and climate change is further exacerbating these risks.
Did you catch that? Kerry is desperately trying to shoehorn the World Health Organization into the debate. The elites are still trying to push the WHO's pandemic treaty through because it takes away the sovereignty of nation states and effectively creates a world government.
A study was released just a few days ago that shows that more than 8 million people a year die from air pollution, more than in the entire COVID pandemic. One person dies every 4 seconds. So by the time I finish this sentence, another person will have died.
Comparing climate change to the COVID pandemic is another telltale sign that the elite are preparing to unleash another wave of tyrannical restrictions on the public. The question is whether the public will fall for the fear-mongering again, or whether they will rise up against the elite and reclaim their freedom and sovereignty.
Rising greenhouse gas emissions are accelerating changes in our environment and harming our global biodiversity and health. We are failing to meet the Paris Agreement goals to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Current estimates suggest we are more likely to hit 2.4 to 2.9 degrees, unleashing untold suffering. Yet, as a colleague recently said to me, we should not be tracking our progress on climate change in degrees Celsius curtailed, but in lives saved. So what is the solution? We can and must make different decisions. We must accept that there is no other way forward than to phase out our reliance on fossil fuels. Simply mitigation and reduction of greenhouse gas emissions is no longer a choice.
According to Kerry, the will of the people means nothing anymore, and it's time for the global elite to seize total control over the future of the human race. It's time to accept your digital serfdom, own nothing, and be happy. Such an outcome would suit far-left techno-fascists like John Kerry and his daughter down to the ground. Like their colleagues in the WEF, they've given up pretending they haven't completely sold their soul to the globalist cause. Vanessa Kerry is determined to keep humanity cowering in fear, urging her colleagues to keep the COVID fear-mongering front and centre in people's minds.
They're happening faster and more severely than we thought. And the data is telling a new and harsher story every day. Decades of inaction have led us to this moment. Rising greenhouse gas emissions are accelerating changes in our environment and harming our global biodiversity and health. We are failing to meet the Paris Agreement goals to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Current estimates suggest we are more likely to hit 2.4 to 2.9 degrees, unleashing untold suffering. Yet, as a colleague recently said to me, we should not be tracking our progress on climate change in degrees Celsius curtailed, but in lives saved.
Vanessa Kerry is not alone in demanding world governments take action post-COVID to keep humanity on its knees. The United Nations has threatened anybody who opposes Agenda 2030, stating this is no longer a negotiation. That's why it's called an agenda and not a wish list. We have all the evidence we need to haul these criminals before an international tribunal on charges including mass murder and crimes against humanity. But first, humanity has to wake up and smell the coffee, before we do not have any rights left to defend. The global elite are laughing at us, provoking us to see how far they can go in revealing their agenda before we rise up against them. Biden declared Easter Sunday to be Transgender Day of Visibility, before denying it the very next day. Except, as we all know, that's complete bullshit. It seems odd that Biden isn't able to look at his own Twitter account to see the truth. The biggest takeaway from this is obviously the question, who's actually running the show? It sure as hell isn't Joe Biden. Like the compromise leaders in Canada, New Zealand, Australia and France, Biden is simply taking his orders from above. And the agenda they are all rolling out in sync, digital ID, banning cash hate speech laws, could not be more disturbing. More after this important message from our sponsor.